What's up, Fleet? Forgotten Fox here, and today I will be bringing you a review of the brand new Tier 8 Japanese cruiser Mogami. Now, the Mogami was originally constructed as a treaty cruiser, having thinner armor to obey the strict limit in overall tonnage imposed by the US. The Imperial Japanese Navy instead decided to create a light cruiser that could be outfitted with heavier guns when needed. The Mogami is currently equipped in its light cruiser loadout with 155mm guns. With the recent Flags of War event, a lot of people have been asking me if the ship is worth the buy, so I will be going through with a full review on how the ship is to be played, equipped, and enjoyed. Now, the Mogami is not exactly the world's most tankiest cruiser. She has quite a low number of overall hit points, as well as citadel protection and damage reduction values. Her max speed is decent at 34 knots, but her main strength lies in her 15 155mm guns, giving her the heaviest small caliber broadside in the game. The guns come with a decent fire chance of 5% or 75% per salvo, but with a 10-second reload, you really need to aim your salvos. As far as her torpedoes are concerned, you have 6 torpedoes per side with a 53-second reload and a fairly small firing arc, which is not something that should be used offensively, but more defensively as a means of area denial or persuading enemy ships to turn away. Now, her anti-aircraft armament is not quite as impressive as it might seem. It really is incapable of providing an AA bubble for her team, and really only functions as a means of self-defense. That being said, the Mogami has an amazing concealment of 7.12 kilometers when spec'd with Concealment Modification 1. Now, speaking of equipment, let me go over my Mogami loadout. In slot 1, I prefer to mount main battery dispersion. The reason I run this is because with 15 guns, the more shells you land on target, the greater your impact. And with a 10-second reload, the Mogami is not forgiving for missed salvos. Slot 2, you definitely want to mount steering gear or acceleration modifications, as the Mogami cannot take a hit under any circumstance, and being able to dodge or avoid shells and torpedoes directly impacts how long you survive in game. As I mentioned earlier, slot 3, you definitely want to mount Concealment System Modification 1, as your concealment allows you to dictate your engagements and decide who you fight and who you run from. Now, as far as supplies are concerned, it's really up to you what you want to run, but I would say anything in the top row is acceptable. I prefer to run improved rations over high-grade coal, as a 10-second reload on the Mogami does not forgive missed or under-aimed shots. As for the commander, the Mogami utilizes the same skills that are used in the main line of Japanese cruisers, so you should be able to use your Japanese cruiser commander without having to respec anything at all. That being said, the skills that benefit Mogami most at the later levels include skills that boost her strengths, like Adrenaline Rush, Demolition Expert, and Honor Seeker. IFHE is one of the most crucial skills to run on the Mogami, as it increases your HE penetration, which is going to be your main source of damage and fires. Now, there's a lot of debate over what to pick for the final skill. I personally recommend Horizontal Protection Expert, as the Mogami does not get citadels often, and its torpedoes are used once, maybe twice a game at most. Being a Tier 8 premium ship, the Mogami is allowed to mount the Tier 8 Japanese historical camouflage, which provides her with bonuses that benefit her playstyle, such as improved range, better traverse speed, and better concealment. These skills are better than all of the other bonuses provided by the other camouflages that you can purchase, and the historical camouflage is permanent, which is why I would recommend it over all of the other camouflages you could rent. Now, the biggest question I've been asked is what to mount for her elite modification. I personally went with cruiser modification because the Mogami has battleship-like turret traverse speed, and her ability to kite away and towards her enemies directly dictates how long she'll survive and how much damage she can put out. While many argue the elite torpedo operator is beneficial, having a mere 1 second shorter reload and better traverse speed on an already small arc provide little real bonuses in battle. Alright, enough talking about the equipment. Let's talk about the gameplay. The Mogami, as I mentioned earlier, is a very fragile ship that relies on her impressive main battery and her stealth to stay alive and deal consistent damage. As such, the Mogami should be played as if she only has 100 hit points. You should never be looking to take any sort of damage at all, and if you are taking damage, you are likely going to be receiving a lot more of it, due to her relatively large citadel that comes at the cost of having 15 main batteries. Now, for this game, I originally wanted to move towards C, but keep an eye on my mini-map. The Mogami with concealment modification has a very small detectability radius. This means that if you are under heavy sustained fire, you can simply stop shooting and kite away, and you will drop off the map undetected. Now, the first ship to pop up is this Prince Eugen, and notice how I waited to fire until he was about to spot me. That lets me get as close as possible to him without him realizing that I'm there. My first salvo was able to light 2 fires on him with the Mogami's impressive fire chance, but even then, one of my turrets was knocked out on the very first salvo I received. So I'm already beginning to kite away while continuing the relentless fire on the Prince Eugen. Since he already burned his damage control, all the fires we lit on him were permanent, leading to his quick demise. But keep an eye on our health. We've already received only minor hits from these enemy battleships, and we've already lost a third of our health. This is why the Mogami cannot stand up to continuous fire, and since I'm seeing the battleships begin to turn their turrets my direction, I figure it's time for me to kite away, so I drop my torpedoes and begin turning out. Now, I do have 2 options here. I can either kite away while continuing to fire at this Nagato, or I can stop firing altogether and just drop off his radar, because he's well outside my detection range. However, this Nagato neglected to look where my torpedoes I fired earlier were, and we were able to successfully finish him off. Now, this Tirpitz has his turrets turned the other direction as he's busy fighting our team, which means we get to sit here and essentially burn him down without any fear of taking incoming damage. So, at this point, I'm just throwing out as much damage as I can to hopefully save my Colorado from losing any more of his health. The Tirpitz neglected to look on the other side of his ship for the torpedoes I fired earlier, which he should have seen coming with a hydroacoustic search had it been active. I can see that my ship is detected, which means that there is likely someone within my detection range, and when I stop firing, my range shrinks, allowing me to drop off radar. That alerted me right away that there was somebody between my maximum range and my detection range on the mini-map, and sure enough, it was this enemy Fiji, who's giving us a fairly large broadside, but at the same time, we are presenting him with a fairly large target. Not wanting to take any more damage than I already have, I throw down the torpedoes and begin kiting away, while continuing to throw shells at the Fiji. It looks like he used his damage control on that single fire I lit, so I begin to kite in towards him, because any fires I light now are permanent, and he looks to be the last ship on his team. The consequences of me doing so are that the Fiji begins landing considerably more hits on my exposed broadside, lowering my health to dangerous levels. Normally, this would be bad. However, since the Fiji is already an easy kill, I'm able to just pick him up and end the game right there. So, a lot of people have been wondering whether the Mogami can hold its own in ranked competitive gameplay or team skirmishes. So I thought I would include some footage of what the Mogami can do when played in a completely competitive environment where the enemy team might not make as many mistakes as in a public match. So this is the Aurora map, and right away I'm moving to a fairly offensive position in the top right flank of this map. And as you can see on the mini-map, the enemy is starting to wander close to my range. The idea is to get some initial hits and fires on the leaders of the pack, and then kite away and fall back so that I can give more support. As you can see on the mini-map, this Kagera just popped up in front of me, and that for the Mogami is bad news. So I've already slammed my ship into reverse so that I can hopefully take as little damage as possible from these torpedoes. All the while, I'm still trying to lay down as much fire as possible to the lead ships while continuing to back off and out-trade my opponents. At this point, I'm looking at my range, and there's no more enemies within my firing range other than this Prince Eugen, who looks to have just barely come into my range. So I'm going to begin angling in, just in case he starts firing back at me, while still attempting to maintain as close to maximum range as possible so that the enemy's primary focus is not my weaker ship, but that of the battleships, like the Tirpitz in front of me. And again, the Mogami must be relentless with its fire to succeed. I am still focusing my main batteries on this Prince Eugen, every 10 seconds dumping another 15 shells his direction, and he ultimately withers from the relentless fire of the 155s. And noticing I've taken a nice chunk of damage, I realize it's time for me to kite away. So I turn away, throw some torps out, and then I continue kiting while still throwing out as many shells as I can. Unfortunately for me, I'm still being fired at even over the island. So I realize it's time for me to use the Mogami's strength, and I stop shooting altogether. This allows my detection range to shrink, and I simply fall off the enemy radar. Now, this is something that it is hard for a lot of newer players to understand, but sometimes your best course of action is not shooting your shells. Sometimes it's far better to live and run away so you get to fight another day rather than just go all out until your ship is sunk. And here's what I mean by that. So, the same Amagi that was shooting at me earlier is now unaware that I've relocated and he's still not able to see me. So I'm able to get my torps off in stealth and then continue moving my ship, and I'm actually able to maintain that range to where he does not spot me, but I still got my torpedoes off. And this is a big advantage, because now that I'm shooting him, he's just detected me, and there's no way that he can dodge the torpedoes that I've sent for him. And this is one of the Mogami's strengths, is her ability to stealth torpedo from her maximum range without getting spotted. And as you can see there, I'm using the Mogami's firing arcs to arc over the island and secure the kill. And that just about does it for the Tier 8 Premium Mogami. She's a great ship that is able to abuse her firepower as well as her stealth to overcome the relative fragile nature of the ship. Overall, I would recommend this cruiser to any of the dedicated cruiser players who really enjoyed the Japanese main line of cruisers, as well as anyone looking for a truly unique and graceful Tier 8 Premium. Remember to like, subscribe, and be sure to leave me a comment on what premium ship I should review next. Thank you all for watching. This is Forgotten Fox signing off.